The right wing doesn't know anything about healthcare either. That's why we created this podcast, because the three of you, plus Dr. Dixit, know more about it than most, and you're willing to go on the record and have these conversations.
These trials that they say they'll do when they're doing this when they're getting this early approval, that, okay, the FDA says, okay, we'll go ahead and give it to you, but show it. It's just this game that's being played with patients being pawns, where the FDA is like winking at them, then pharma's winking back at them. It's like, these trials are never going to get done.
You don't want a world where healthcare is non-excludable and non-rival risk, where we have that sort of capacity.
In 2008, I didn't see that. There was a big wall. The only wall I saw was healthcare's a right, healthcare's a right, healthcare's a right. Not the, what's the system that's going to help my future patients access this healthcare.
Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited. I've been gone for 3 weeks. I'm happy to see at least two of the crew, and Dr. Koch is very excited to see me because he's on his phone. We've got Dr. Dixit and Dr. Toy joining us later today, but my two favorites, don't tell anyone I said that, my two favorites are here. They're what matters, and we're ready to kick it off. Now, we got some interesting news already. We were just talking about what's going on in the world. We were going through our news stories. So, officially, welcome to the Doctor's Lounge. It is, this is going to be our first episode in August. Every single week, we're going to put these out on Sunday. That's when they're going to be released. You'll see clips throughout the week, but on Sundays is when you're going to get them. And why does my camera keep moving? That's no good. All right, so here we go. Dr. Koch, you want to tell us about what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of pretty dejected that that's what I was messaging when I just hearing the last hour or so that Vinay Prasad, who was the number 2 guy, I guess, or the guy at CBER, which is the FDA division that handles biologics and vaccines, sounds like he has just resigned. He had just come on with kind of a bang about a few months ago. Done a lot of great work. Was really moving things in the right direction, I think, in terms of the FDA not just being a rubber stamp for anything that has the glimmer of hope, and kind of bringing his critical thinking, which he's very good at, to the table in terms of what does work, what doesn't work, what should be approved, what shouldn't be approved, what's killing young boys, and what should be pulled. And it turns out that the ecosystem doesnn't like that. The ecosystem likes some level of incompetence and likes some level of rubber stamping. And I think it's a bad signal for the Trump administration that they're letting somebody go that's who's so competent. So
Now you've known him for
a very bad thing.
Now you've known him for some time. Is this?
I have. Yeah, I've known him for a while. Vinay and I have been arguing about evidence and the thresholds for what makes for good evidence for a long time, since like 2013 maybe, a long time, 2015. Sorry, more than about a decade. And we argued pretty vociferously about stuff back and forth. But I think Vinay has directionally been correct in the sense that I think there's a large portion of things that are approved. And the problem with the current system that leads into what we talk about all the time is once things are approved by the FDA is like a kingmaker. The FDA is the Midas touch. So now once you're approved, your valuation of your company goes way up because FDA approval translates into some payment by some third party, whether it be, Medicare, whether it be commercial payers. And so, it takes a drug that's worth nothing. And because you have a third party payer in the form of the government and the private insurers of the United States, which are the biggest payers in the world, now they're, basically they pay, and they traditionally have paid for these products. And so that zooms up these valuations and zooms up these revenues a ton. Just take the showdown the last 2 weeks has been over a company called Sarepta and a gene therapy they have called Elvidis. Elvidis is a one-shot gene therapy for kids with a terminal disease called Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, where it's this horrible disease where over time, the mostly boys, their muscles waste away and ultimately end up dying by their 30s. And so Sarepta came up with a one-shot gene that was able to gene edit, and get you more of a protein called dystrophin, which was believed to be, which is deficient in these kids. The problem was that the initial trial was negative. The trial that was done to get approval, the primary endpoint, which is some gold standard, how much you can do muscle strength-wise for these boys. Well, it was a negative trial. Peter Marks, the former CBER head, the same guy who has thinks that boosting 15-year-old boys with the COVID booster forever annually is a good strategy. That same guy is the one that overruled his FDA staff, who had recommended against approval of Elvidis, and Peter Marks said, no, secondary endpoints are positive. There is more dystrophin, and therefore we are going to approve it because these boys, there's nothing else for them. That each therapy, at least the list price of the drug, is $3.2 million. Don't know what is actually being paid. Company's revenue in 2024 on the strength partly of Elvidis or largely on Elvidis is $2 billion a year. CEO of that company, Doug Ingram, compensation package is $12 million a year. And it turns out there were significant safety concerns about the vector used to deliver the gene therapy. That vector is an adenovirus vector, and it's highly immunogenic. And, there was last week, 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, there were the third death that was reported with kids who got this gene therapy drug. And they were because of liver failure. So there was a lot of, so based on that, the FDA, which is supposed to be in charge of deciding on risks and benefits, kind of, looked to pull and get Elvidis off the market. And it looked like that was the direction they were headed until, I think, Sarepta and the other folks in the biotech space kind of got very active. A lot of, I think, patients also got very active because they were upset about, access being taken away from this drug. And long and the short of it is that, Sarepta is still alive. Doug Ingram is still the CEO, and Vinay Prasad, as of, within the last hour, is now no longer at the head of CBER. So it seems like the pharmaceutical companies, despite all the Maha talk, pharmaceutical companies are still running the show.
How many children a year are affected by this very bad disease?
So it's a pretty small group of people. How many?
And then tell me, I was at the All-In Summit a couple of years ago, and we had a lady talking about gene therapies. What's, for the audience, what's the big key for gene therapies? Why are they so great? Why are they worth looking at?
Well, I mean, gene therapies are very promising in the sense that, it appears that it says 1 in 3,500 to 1 in 6,000 males have it. So
that's actually more than I thought. I thought it was a lot more.
That's a big number.
That's not small.
So gene therapy, if the problem is that it's a muscular, it's kind of a muscle wasting disease where you ultimately all the muscles in your body basically fall apart, and ultimately, it affects your cardiac muscle, it affects your diaphragm, and you end up dying in your now in your 30s. Used to be about 20, 30 years ago, you would die in your teen years. Gene therapy seems promising in that if it's the problem is not making enough of this dystrophin protein, that if you can gene edit and get more dystrophin protein, then hey, that should result in some positive outcome. So theoretically it's appealing, but there's of course so much stuff that we don't know, and we've learned so much, right? And here we have a drug, a gene therapy that clearly does increase the level of dystrophin a significant amount, but doesn't seem to have the clear functional efficacy that you would have. So if you just increase dystrophin, but you don't do it in the right way, perhaps, I mean, I'm obviously speculating, I'm not a Duchenne's expert, just based on what the trials are showing and based on what the real world experience has been, it seems like, that may not be enough. On top of that, you got to really look at what the, how you deliver the drug is an issue, right? You can't just take some strand of DNA and give it to somebody and have somebody take it by mouth. It has to be delivered in a certain way to kind of protect that whole mechanism of gene editing plus what you're editing and get it into the right place. and in this particular case, the specific vector, the adenovirus vector, is highly immunogenic and requires high dose steroids. Two of the kids that died were 15-year-olds. So you think about 15-year-olds dying after getting this gene therapy drug. The initial trial was only in 4 to 5-year-olds, or young kids, after 4 to 5-year-olds who were ambulatory, right? Those were the only kids. That was 800 kids that were in the EMBARK trial, and 2023 that trial was negative in those kids, and is still approved. In 2024, Peter Marks then expands the drug to everyone, meaning ambulatory, non-ambulatory, young kids, old kids, it doesn't matter. Everyone can get it, right? And now you have 2 15-year-olds that are dead of liver failure. And of all the things that muscular dystrophy does in terms of the organs it affects, it does not affect the liver. All right. So despite what the drug company has been saying, these are very likely, highly likely to be adverse events and, mortalities. These are boys being killed who may have been able to live an extra 15 years if not for getting this drug, and getting a drug that is very questionable in terms of what exactly the efficacy is. Meaning, is it resulting in
what kind of relief do the families get? Or do you give up? I'm not familiar with trials. Do you give up basically all your rights if you enter into a trial like this? Like there's complete immunity for the drug companies. Yeah. I mean, in general, I'm not really asking for you to be a legal mind here. Yeah. And then, is this typical for this job? Like, as you've looked at past administrations, is this how it's been? Like, those people depart this job when they go up against the pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we've had it. I guess I don't think we've had anyone that has been as, has kind of taken this approach. I think Janet Woodcock, Peter Marks, I mean, I can't even name you who these heads were, right?
Right. They were generally good, they didn't really long bureaucrats.
Yeah, I mean, and then the story, I did this interview with a mom, Catherine Collins, whose child has Duchenne's earlier today, and I'm gonna get some clips out there, hopefully even later this evening. And it's look, I think it's pretty clear that there's a great desire and a demand, of course, for therapies in this terrible disease. But there's also that terribleness of that disease creates a certain level of desperation, especially in newly diagnosed parents, where you're just grasping and reaching for anything. And, and so even the faint glimmer of hope that this may do something is enough to kind of make you, take your kid and get this drug. And, in the face of all that, you really need to be very, very transparent. And I think it's pretty clear that, Sarepta has not been very transparent. So these approvals for the drugs that Sarepta has put out, and this is like the 5th drug or something like that Sarepta has put out. They're not all gene therapy. Some have been other antisense codon type of therapies, but they have almost all been accelerated approvals, meaning this early approval track, so that you can get folks therapies before a full approval is done. But what's happened is the early approval is done. The early approval is done with the idea that you're going to do follow-up studies and follow these folks up over X number of years to show benefit, right? And guess what? It's been 10 years since Sarepta came on scene, and according to at least the folks in the Duchenne's community I've talked to, there are no follow-up trials that are ever completed.
None.
Right? I mean, so this is some shady stuff here.
Insane.
And so you have moms of older kids, right? Who did try all these different things, right? Who are telling me that, look, it kind of feels like we were just pawns that were being used. And, where's the data? Where's the long-term data on these drugs? And, you get these accelerated approvals. Your company's making $2 billion a year annually. Or do we not deserve to see follow-up data?
It's hard, right? Because, what do you want? And this is, going back to, I think, more a philosophical debate. What do you want for your follow-up data before you approve a drug, right? If we had demanded, 10-year follow-up data before we approved the COVID vaccine, there would be pitchforks and angry mobs, right? So it's a difficult question, and that's theoretically what the phase 4 is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And, but it's supposed to fund these, but yeah, go ahead.
So take the COVID experience, and you had approvals of the boosters that were based on, given the myocarditis signals that were seen. Okay, do confirmatory trials to show what exactly the risk is. How cardioactive are these, right? And those don't require. That doesn't require 10-year follow-up data, 10-year follow-up of like long-term cardiac outcomes. That
mistakes
simply
were certainly made with COVID. I was just using it as an initial example.
No. But my point is just this seems to be the way everything goes. Meaning you get these kind of accelerated approvals. Right. You write all these things in the FDA about, we're going to do this trial, we're going to do that trial, and we're talking about you take 115 to 17-year-olds. There's more than enough equipoise, meaning there's a ton of parents that are going to take their 15 to 17-year-olds to get this drug. Measure a baseline troponin, measure troponin at 24, 48 hours after you get, dose 1 and dose 2, right? That's 100 kids. And I mean, I'm saying, I know this is going to be done because it has been done. It's been done in, various different countries, not in the US. It's been done in, different countries. And that's where we learned a lot of how cardiac these drugs are. But, Pfizer, Moderna, I mean, where are these trials that they say they'll do when they're doing when they're getting this early approval that, okay, the FDA says, okay, we'll go ahead and give it to you, but show it. It's just this game that's being played with patients being pawns where the FDA is like winking at them, then pharma's winking back at them. It's like, these trials are never going to get done. I mean, it'd be nice to know for the 800 kids in the EMBARK trial for Duchenne's, okay, fine, go ahead. We're going to, because this is a desperate situation, go ahead, we're going to get this drug in people's hands. But do we have, what type of adverse reporting system do we have for this type of stuff?
I guess I don't understand what the relief is. I mean, generally speaking, if somebody doesn't fulfill contractual obligations, there's relief. And I don't know enough about trials and how they work.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, at least, I'm not an expert, but it doesn't seem like there's there doesn't seem like there's anything that happens. I don't know if they're fines. I mean, I've never heard of a fine for that, but maybe some
No, you get,
viewer
so
will tell us we're wrong.
You get early approval and then you just get to enjoy all your money, whether there's efficacy or not.
And if you're the FDA, and if you're somebody in the FDA and senior leadership that says, okay, this isn't working. We've had multiple boys that have died using this drug, right? We should pull approval from this drug and get it off the market. Apparently, people don't like that, and the regulator's gone.
That's generally how it works with regulators. I mean, being a regulator is your friend obviously is doing the right thing, but generally regulators are just there because they were in the industry first and they're going back tomorrow.
Yeah. Well said. So, but anyway, I think we can move on to another topic, and so I won't be as depressed. But this interview that I did for an hour with this mom, man, fantastic. So, some video glitches, but
I'm looking forward to seeing the clip.
So we'll get it out. Yeah, same. Absolutely.
It's going to be really good. And then I want to figure out how we can be more helpful. I think that's part of what we're supposed to do on this podcast, right? Is like, I've never heard of Duchenne's. When you sent it to us on the messages earlier today, I was like, I need to look that up tonight. I don't even know what that is. But I mean, like, okay, let's be fair. There's like, probably 1 million disease states. And so you can't possibly know about all of them. This is obviously one that's important to you. And certainly one that affected Benet. And so definitely worth learning about. I do think that there is some interesting, the person who invented satellite radio, it's a she. She is a she, but she was a he previously. I forgot her name. Absolutely fantastic business person, created satellite radio, and today is creating gene therapies. I heard an interview. I'm going to find it and I'm going to send you guys the interview. Her daughter was suffering from something very badly. She went to a very small company in Indianapolis that had the patents. They wouldn't sell them to her. She becomes a billionaire with the satellite radio company. She goes back, is able to buy and obtain the patent, save her daughter's life. But like, everybody can't do that. But it's an incredible story of how it gets done. Because a lot of these drugs that are good for small groups, such as the one you just described, Dr. Coca? There's no real relief because they're like, well, we can't make any money. We can't do anything. The most we could ever make's, $50 million. We're not going to do it for that.
Right.
So tell me more about, I guess in closing, tell me about, so Vinay says, hey, I think we ought to shut this down. What's kind of the process? Is it like, does he get tied, or is there like a,
no.
It's gonna be a thing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, right. And I don't mean to of course, the FDA is a large organization, and Vinay is, of course, one member. I mean, he's the head of the CBER group, which is the final. Basically, he's the final decider in chief about some of these about something like this. So, regardless of what his staff may advise him on, he would ultimately make the final decision on some of these calls. And I'm sure it's not just him. There's, of course, a number of different. He doesn't make every single. I mean, there's too many drugs for him to make every single thing. But I assume, at least from the public comments that have been made, that he was very involved in this particular, in the decision making related to this. So I mean, it's something that has this high profile. Of course, it's always going to get to that. So, but there's a process. You can't just be like, okay, tomorrow just wake up and be like, all right, this drug's gone. There's no kings in the United States, despite what people say. And so there's a process to do it. So the initial steps, I think, that were made were asking the company to voluntarily suspend based on the deaths that had happened, and then the next steps would be, okay, there's a legal process to go through in terms of pulling approval, ultimately pulling FDA approval for a drug that's been approved. That's a whole process I think. I mean, it seems like they may have been on the process for, though. Again, the signs that the other team, public pressure plus public pressure, that was winning was that yesterday, the request for a voluntary hold was withdrawn, right? So clearly, there's a bunch of pressure brought to bear. The really interesting thing to me, that I wrote about and was, and I put out this Saturday, was that Laura Loomer, who is right-wing online influencer, 2 million followers, pretty, fairly, I don't know what the right word for her is, but populist, I guess. She interestingly went after and came after Vinay. So there was all these there's all these pieces on,
Why?
Saying that, right, so they cast Vinay as a left-wing loony, a acolyte of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, who hated Trump, and he was there to derail Trump's agenda, right? And part of derailing Trump's agenda was derailing Trump's decision to, Trump wants right to try, and he wants people to get drugs that work for them, and this guy, this Vinay Prasad guy, is there to derail this agenda. And he's a closet, he said in the past that he was a Sanders Warren liberal, and this guy, and it was unrelenting. One piece, then another piece, and then, multiple tweets about it. And then finally yesterday, an out of context clip about Vinay talking about, people needing a boogeyman, and, how, he had something about Trump voodoo dolls and sticking pins in voodoo dolls.
Yes. I don't know. I've been kind of quiet, right? Because I haven't been able to be here for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say is, as much as I was harsh to the Biden administration, and they deserved every bit of it, look, it's the same with these people. I mean, I want to grab someone by the shoulders. I'm not going to say by the throat because that wouldn't be very nice. I want to grab some of these administrators by the shoulders and shake them, because Dr. Oz not doing any better. I like Secretary Kennedy. I like the food stuff, but is he doing anything really for independent medicine? No. Laura Loomer. Okay. I don't know who that is really. I'm sorry. I don't, I know she's a right-wing person who loves Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean anything to me.
Cernovich came after me on Twitter today. So.
Who?
I think Cernovich.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah.
That guy
came after you?
Yeah.
Saying what?
This is the problem. These right-wing jagoffs don't even know anything about healthcare. I had to listen. Dr. Carlson interviewed someone yesterday. Someone sent me the clip. That's what I was going to say, and then I'm going to get reaction.
Now we have Dutch Rojas saying right-wing jagoffs on the Doctor's Lounge podcast. None of us will have a role in any future Trump administration because, God forbid anyone. Don't say anything about voodoo dolls, all right, guys?
That's what the beeps are
voodoo dolls.
for. That's what the beeps are for. No, my point is, like, I'm happy to be harsh to the people that I didn't like in the previous, but I'm not going to stop. Like, I just don't understand. Like, this whole conversation came up yesterday about Medicaid. And somebody said, oh, they're just taking all the money from Medicaid. It was this right-wing nut job. And I just thought,
Wait.
oh my God, what are you talking about? And I had to listen to it for 10 minutes before I told the person to shut that off. So like, look, I guess my point is, like, the right wing doesn't know anything about healthcare either. That's why we created this podcast, because the three of you plus Dr. Dixit know more about it than most. And you're willing to go on the record and have these conversations. So, like, look, everybody in the world knows that Vinay doesn't like me, that he blocked me on X like he blocked everybody else. But I happen to like him, and I don't care that he's a lefty. What I want is for him to do his job, right? And if he's doing his job effectively, which is approving drugs based on scientific data and saying to other drug makers, hey, maybe you ought to take a step back. Let's just be a little cautious. Like, what's wrong with that? I don't understand the problem with that. Like, that's an issue. Dr. DeGiorgio.
I totally agree. I mean, I like Vinay. He's a buddy of mine. He does lean a bit lefty populist in some of his economic views. He, I think I was the first one to mention Thomas Sowell to him and that he should read it. And he kind of looked at me sideways, and he, in the past, was clearly a Bernie Sanders supporter. But we all have our views evolve. This is what Cernovich just got on me is apparently I had a tweet from 2018 that was had said nice things about David Frum. So Cernovich said that he used some colorful language. But our views evolve, right? And my views have evolved, and I would probably not post that same tweet from 2018 in 2025. And I am man enough and secure enough in my principles that I can own up to mistakes I've made in the past.
But he's one of those
guys all have.
Constantly saying, like, everybody learns and everybody moves, and like whatever I thought 3 years ago, I don't think today. I mean, like, I'm not the same person.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
The problem with that, and that really is a problem with most of these right wing twats, is that they really do hype on. Well, 3 years ago you said, blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, pal, I changed my mind. That's what smart people do.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit last week. Is that's really what the other side's known for, is for having a closed tent and having a kind of ideological purity, where I don't think that we really do. I mean, I disagree with the three of you on some stuff, but I'm still happy to discuss it in a open, respectful manner because I respect the heck out of all of you.
I'm trying to find the Cernovich thing.
It was a parking.
His claim to fame was that a CIA agent showed up at his house and told him to stop doing research on some story about Epstein. That's how he got famous. I mean, that's it.
There, I just sent you the tweet on our group chat.
I see. Okay, what the heck? Where is this thing?
Was the guy in the Marine Corps? Did he go to med school? Did he do anything besides do some films and, smoke weed? I don't think so. I'm
looking at this tweet. He actually replied to you.
Yeah.
But why did he? Where did
tweet
he?
was about
how did that even come up? But he's like looking through your tweets from 2018.
Was he work for the CIA? He's got a CIA scraper. Like what?
Wait. He just randomly did that. You didn't interact with him at all.
No, my original tweet was about a parking ticket I just got, which as soon as I posted, I was like, this is kind of silly. I should take it down. But then I got a ton of, and anyway.
Hey, Dr. DeGiorgio, I saw that. Oh, go ahead.
No, he got 522,000 impressions on this post, and probably some of this was driven by Cernovich.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it is people accusing me of being a leftist and getting what I deserve for living in San Francisco. Little do they know.
Oh, I see.
And I said, man, I wish some of my economic tweets had blown up like this. And someone said, nope, now you're parking ticket guy. So, such is social media.
Well, you did have a pretty good one today with our old friend Max. And by the way, I'll beep out his name because I never want to embarrass him in any way.
Yeah, no, our old friend. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've kind of grown fond of him. Like, I read his tweets and I think he's like my 7-year-old son. And I just have to explain the basics of economics to him, and I'm happy to do it. And then you've really taken on that mantle. Tell us a little bit about that interaction.
Yeah, it actually came from somebody else had posted a tweet of, what's his name, pushing the boulder up the hill, and saying that it's basically a public good is not something that's good for the public, right? And so I think we've spoken about this before. Basic economic definitions. A public good is by definition non-excludable and non-rivalrous.
Yeah.
And so I just posted that I'm sick of doing that in healthcare too, something along those lines. And the healthcare is not a public good. And of course, this person responded and said, well, it should be a public good. I said, well, you can wish all you want, but that doesn't make it. Wishing does not change the economic definition. And that most healthcare transactions are, in fact, private goods and should be funded as such. And then there are some healthcare interactions which you could say are non-excludable, but are still rivalrous. And that you should treat those as community goods or common goods is the economic definition.
What I really want you to do is operate on 4 people at the same time. That's
right.
what I really want you to do.
I am not that good. 2, 3 tops.
Yeah, right? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Dan could do 4. Dan's better than me, though.
Oh, come on. We all know that. Please. It's Long Island, New York, the healthcare is efficient and really good.
Right. And, I think this person, he took it actually another step further, saying we have the capacity to make healthcare non-rivalrous and non-excludable. That we could fund enough healthcare where you could not exclude anyone from getting healthcare at any time and basically force every healthcare provider to see any patient that walks through their door. He didn't put it in expressly those terms. But again, I think this is just sort of the economic, Care Bear economic view of the world that, mommy and daddy can provide everything. Let's just print more money and make it happen. And that's just, we don't want a world where healthcare is non-excludable and non-rivalrous, where we have that sort of capacity.
Here's my question for you in this is, where does the love for government come from? I mean, here's my personal experience, right? The Phoenix VA, which is one VA hospital out of, I don't know, a lot. Call it 800. The VA was directly responsible in 2014 for the death, directly responsible for over 1,500 veteran deaths and indirectly responsible for almost 10,000. Right? They had this whole shell game where they just ignored requests for appointments. The OIG came in, did a formal report. Like, it was big. And they kind of said, here's what happened. And no one went to prison. No one went to the brig. No one went to jail. Nothing happened. They moved the administrators around the country. Then we have the ACA, get rid of, let's put a moratorium on physician-owned hospitals. Let's create super narrow networks. Let's really raise the price of premiums. We have certificate of need laws that prevent competition. We have governments that pursue people for legal reasons. Hey, I don't like your party. I think the Republicans are doing that today. I think the Bidens did it at the last go round. We're seeing all this manipulation in government. Government manipulates financial services, you could pick it by sector or industry. And yet we have a swath of society that believes that somehow the same government is going to deliver high quality healthcare at a lower price. What? I mean, I would like for someone to steel man that argument for me, because I try to do it in my free time. And I can't.
I have had some interactions with people, and again, as a former leftist, I think I'm a little bit sympathetic to their views. And what I was told, and I could see their point of view from this, is that government institutions are actually more accountable than private ones, because anybody can participate in democracy and vote, and not anyone can participate in the market because you have to have money to participate in the market. Again, I think that's a very utopian idea, and that obviously does not hold up in practice. And there's plenty of economic literature that refutes that idea, notably Buchanan's public choice theory stuff. So I fundamentally disagree with that. But that is their argument, is that anyone can participate in the democratic process. I actually had somebody say the DMV is more responsive than private companies because it has to answer to voters. And again, I think
They
all
don't
of us
answer to voters at all.
of course they don't. We would all look at that argument as silly. But
Yeah.
I think it's a childish argument whereby you can hold the government responsible because your vote is so powerful that is actually a better way to hold people responsible than the private market. Despite all the evidence, despite, the history of Soviet communism and all that, again, it's a very utopian ideal, but I think that's their point of view.
You had a similar point of view, Dr. Choi, at one time.
I'm actually like reflecting back to 2008. I went to actually like drive 6 hours. I remember because I used to like listen to Barack Obama's speeches, in my free time. And like I drove and I went and like I read his books. And I'm thinking back to that time. I was in debt. I was a student. I was living on a very fixed income. I grew up as an immigrant's family's child and my parents, did not have insurance. And so I had some very deeply personal experiences, being a non-insured, patient, or experiencing that. And, also feeling, helpless. And, these are, I guess, when I think back to, the forces that drove me to be like, hey, change, hope, these are the words, right, that Obama used, saying like, hey, the government is going to do good for you. I think that's a valid argument and appeal that good politicians use. Okay, when I say valid, I'm saying that with a grain of salt. I'm saying that, there are instances in history where government has been the instrument of good, right? Whether it be historically in the world wars or, us being the beacon, American government being the beacon of democracy in the world. And, you can argue lots of movements in American history, like the civil rights movement, women's right, voting rights, women's rights in America. These are like federally driven, they were enforced. I mean, they were social movements, but they were ultimately enforced by the federal government and brought up about what I would always argue as positive societal change. And I think that healthcare is, from an ideologically standpoint, when someone stands behind, hey, we need to make healthcare a non-competing good, they're talking about it as this is something that is should be a universal right. And I think I understand that angle, but you are lost in the idealism and not looking at the pragmatic application. And I think that's the journey that many of us probably on this podcast have taken.
Well, look, there's some safety, right, in being a student. I understand why students and residents think this way, because they've never been punched in the mouth. And that's what happens. When I had my little, 287 square foot apartment in the West Village, this is what happens. You get punched in the mouth. You spend $4,200 a month on rent, and you're trying to figure out how to make it work and work 100 hours a week, and you're getting paid like very little, right? And it's just like, hey, I have $90 until, payday on Friday, and it's Wednesday. And you're 24 years old, and you're like trying to figure it out. But I don't think you get there until like life begins to happen, until you have kids and until you have bills and until none of this stuff is really reconcilable until then.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, it seems like that's when most of you guys made your changes.
I think that a lot of us probably made our changes as we tried to work in the system, right? And then you realize there's a limited supply of physicians, limited supply of nurses. I worked in a safety net hospital in Newark for 5 years, and I saw the resource challenges and the demands of an underserved population. And I don't look at that population and go, oh, none of these people deserve healthcare. Of course, everyone has the right to healthcare and to better their families and, have, enjoy good health. I think as physicians, we look at our patients as all we want for them, right? But when you look at the economics behind it, you have to supply those services, and to grow a supply, the economic rules that have applied for centuries still apply. If you don't motivate people to produce those supplies and healthcare services, there's going to be a shortage. Okay.
That's right.
And unless, and that's where I think when I was in 2008, I didn't see that. There was a big wall. The only wall I saw was healthcare is a right. Healthcare is a right. Healthcare is a right. Not what's the system that's going to help my future patients access this healthcare, and what are the kind of practical infrastructure things that I need to be thinking about, policy things. I was completely unaware. All I was screaming was healthcare access for everyone. And I think that's where the kind of progressives, that's their short-sightedness when it comes to single payer and all these policies that I'm deathly scared of, because I think that's the end of excellent healthcare in America, is they don't apply the economics and infrastructure and delivery infrastructure. They don't really think about it. They think about healthcare is right and they stop there. That's a big problem. And I hope we can message to reach across the other side and wake them up and be like, hey, you can't just be talking about healthcare is right. We agree. We agree that everyone should be allowed as much, but to grow that pie and give everyone the chance to have it, you have to talk about the system.
Yep. Dr. Coca, does government equal morality? I mean, is there safety in systems? Or is it all kind of learned helplessness? Like, what is it?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I think folks look to the government to kind of introduce values into society that you want. And I think one of the things for me, even broader than the healthcare debate, because I completely agree with everything Dan was saying and Anthony was saying about being young and idealistic and thinking that, you could just have these things provided, and it would work. It would work in this beautiful, beautiful way. And then you start getting into the system, and you realize that no, all that's going to happen is that any central authority is going to kind of screw it up. Those famous words from Ronald Reagan in terms of the most scary words, right, or the most feared words I think in the English language is, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help you. But I think the question is whether there can be this kind of slow understanding and epiphany that we light in young folks to get them to understand that you don't necessarily want the government giving you morality. You don't want government values to be reflected, because the question is, well, whose values do you want reflected? Is it somebody who lives in Brooklyn? Is it somebody who lives in suburban Alabama? Is it somebody who's Catholic? Is it somebody who's an atheist? Like, which government? Like, what do you want the government to represent? And it turns into whoever has power over the government. If the government is in charge of all these different things, whether it be healthcare, education, etc., there are these value judgments that the government is forced to kind of come down on one end or the other of. And I think for a very long time we've looked to the government to kind of institute those values throughout, and it makes people feel happier when they win. I guess when your side wins and they're in there and they're kind of putting their values and kind of stamping those all over. But I think we have to look to local communities and a lot more than we do look to some DC is not going to be able to give you morality, or shouldn't give you morality. I think that's just a recipe for civil war. I mean, there's just it's a bad idea. So no, the government should not be instituting morality, and the government should have no business, really not much business, I should say, in healthcare and in healthcare either. So,
Hayek was he wasn't perfect. He was wrong about some stuff, but I think the biggest insight he had was decentralized decision making. Is much better than centralized decision making. If the ACA had instead been Medicare for all and had eliminated private insurance, as the Medicare for all advocates want to do, then that means Donald Trump and RFK would be in charge of 100% of healthcare right now. And I don't think anyone who's in favor of Medicare for all would be happy with that arrangement. So that's the typical argument I use is if you like government so much, what do you say when your worst enemy is in charge of the government? How are you going to ensure that the government that you empower is not going to be used against you later on?
I mean, look, I think about it, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's not always about healthcare, right? I always think about it in terms of our military actions. But you really look at World War II. I mean, look at all the insidiousness. We had American corporations selling weapons, supplies, food, munitions to the other side, and that was perfectly okay, and the government knew about it. It's well documented, right? I mean, there hasn't been a time. I mean, look, I think we all thought after 9/11, like, hey, rah, 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 let's go, let's go, let's go. And then it turns out we're in a different country, and we knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction, and we went anyway. We sacrificed, 10,000 young men, women too, but 10,000 young men that could have been here, their sons and brothers and fathers. And then you just look in history and you go, okay, well, what about Tuskegee? That was a great experiment done on African Americans. I mean, like, how many times does the government have to lie to you to get it across? We did talk about the COVID vaccine a little bit earlier with Dr. DeGiorgio. And then, of course, we were talking about Vinay Prasad. And the question is, how many times does a Pfizer have to screw you over? I mean, like, everybody in the country that's halfway educated now has access to free Chat GPT. Right? Like, just look up the last 20 cases and their values from Pfizer, and then just go down the list. Like, look up top 5 pharmaceutical companies, and then look up their biggest lawsuits. I mean, it's everything from moms and daughters in Africa murdering them and killing them with drugs, to paying a $5 billion fine, but admitting no criminal liability. I mean, all of these so-called people are supposed to be protecting us, and people don't want to face that music. They're happy to look at the government and say, please come help us. And that's not,
I think, yeah, I honestly think this has been going on for so long. I don't know that there's any hope necessarily in expecting masses of people to suddenly wake up and be like, oh, the government shouldn't do this for us. The government shouldn't do that for us. I think the only hope is, in terms of what Dan was saying, in terms of what would make you not scared, or not make us not feel totally hopeless, is fighting to preserve the right to not be in the system, right? Similar to what the Amish do. I think that's all you can do. I think this whole idea of like getting Medicare to do whatever, I mean, like, just as what we have to do is fight to be allowed, which is crazy to think about, but all you do is fight to be allowed to not be in Medicare, not be in Medicaid, because 100%, these folks are going to attempt to shut that door, as they have done, in every other country that has tried to institute some type of nationalized healthcare system. Like I'm thinking of, I shouldn't say that, thinking of Canada and the UK as our, closest ones that have done that. So, and then let Medicare, Medicaid, like, okay, fine. You want to have your Medicaid card and feel good about having Medicaid for all? You want to have your Medicare card and feel good about Medicare for all? Go right ahead and go see the nurse practitioner down the street is going to do your, lumbar laminectomy or whatever. Go ahead. You're
there you go.
Yeah, you're free to go to them, or you can come to Dan Choi and Anthony George. You know where I'm going to go. So,
look, I think the pendulum swings back and forth, right? Trust in government, during the Obama era was at probably like an all-time high, right? Everyone's like buying into the, Obama message, and then we swung the other way, extreme distrust in the government, and I think COVID kind of cemented that too. Now we're back with the pendulum, where you have more of a populist movement and you have a lot of support from the Trump administration. And Trump has campaigned on, kind of freeing the people, right, from, tyranny of government and He's actually taken, I've been listening to the All In Summit. It's not a summit, but they did like a summit in DC recently. I listened to a few podcasts with Treasury Descent and some of the AI people on there. And I think that in a lot of sectors right now, Trump has been taking steps to deregulate and get the government out of the picture, right? Let the free market kind of reign. He's supporting, what do you call it, energy projects. Now it's going to take like a couple weeks to get a project, approved by the federal government. Before it used to take 2 years, right? So great, get the government out of the picture. We've seen the ill effects of government overreach over the last, for the, I don't know, you can argue 20 years. So maybe this is a grand step in deregulating and letting the people giving choice and freedom, right? School choice, lots of things. There's movements in lots of things, even crypto, right? Where we're kind of getting away from the regulated, banking industry and putting power back to the people, hopefully. That's what the message appears to be anyway. I don't trust politicians, whether they're right or left. I don't, honestly, I'm not sure if I trust the Trump administration, but like, my big question is, how do you guys feel about, the comments so far on healthcare by the Trump administration? I feel like it's crickets. I feel like there haven't been any comments made on how to, bring the power back to the people in healthcare and I don't control of the players that have been so propped up so long by government intervention, which are the health systems and insurance companies. Like, where is the action being taken by the Trump administration? And what I'm worried about is there will be no action. And it will be, business as usual, which is what I'm suspecting. How do you guys feel about that?
I think Trump is downstream from the wider populist movement. And I think, this is a place where I don't think Trump can lead. I think Trump is a prisoner to the vast majority of the populace, both right and left, that believe that, when you get sick, somebody needs to be there. And the government needs to make that happen. And I think I just don't see it. That's why you hear crickets. That's why nobody wants to touch it. I mean, if Trump, if somebody came up, if Medicare for all is, God knows what, it's probably fairly popular at this point or something. But yeah, I think Trump would support it. I think, everyone views healthcare and Trump isn't, by the way, some unique person in that sense. I mean, Ken Arrow and even Hayek, right? All of these folks just didn't really believe that free markets could work in healthcare. And I think it is I think it's going to take a long time to change that. I think you got to win the cultural war first. And I'm talking about winning the cultural war in healthcare. And that's why, the most important thing is probably, Dr. DeGiorgio's cartoon. The Tuttle Twins and Dr. George's cartoon is what's going to carry the day over it, because there's no way that the populace as it is going to be happy. I mean, I would love to know, you take MAGA Republicans and tell them that, hey, we're gonna deregulate Medicare and you may have to pay a little bit more for Medicare. They are going to scream bloody murder. It's just not going to happen.
What do you think, Dr. DeGiorgio?
I mean, I think the way you can phrase it is that, why the Medicare for all takes away your option to have private insurance or even pay cash out of pocket. And I think that restriction on liberty speaks to enough Americans to keep Medicare for all at bay. And that's really the message I try to harp out, is that, the freedom that comes with being outside a government controlled healthcare system is what we want to preserve. And I think it's a matter of, I don't know, I need to...
Only if you can preserve the ability to exist outside of it. So I think if you can preserve that, the system collapses on itself, and Medicare, Medicaid gets such a bad name. The NHS is so popular because you really can't exist outside the NHS.
Right.
They have this captured...
The NHS is not popular today. I mean, you can get on our favorite platform on X and you can see it.
Yeah.
It is massively, markedly. I mean, you got junior doctors making 30 quid an hour.
I know, but their solution, again, this whole what happened after World War II, their solution is It's just we're just not funding it enough.
Yeah,
The
government
needs to
harder.
fund it more.
We need more government
I
harder.
don't disagree with that. That's 100% true.
Yeah.
So I have a question because I think this is an interesting point. So you say let's opt out, right? And I'm more of a like let the free market decide if people want to opt out or opt in. But if you're going to opt in, right? Let's say we opt into Medicare, right? Of course, my solution is like, hey, let's put 5,000 doctors together or 25,000 doctors together, and then let Medicare negotiate with us. Because then I'm not dealing with then, and if I own the right, like physician-owned hospital, or if I own the right, some ASCs,
Yeah.
then I can buy my way in to their higher reimbursement categories, and I can screw them over. I mean, they're already screwing me, so why don't I screw them back? Right? So
Okay, you can only negotiate with Medicare if you can choose not to take Medicare.
Yeah, the negotiation requires being able to walk away, right?
100%. And in fact, there is no negotiation, right? They assign you a number. But my point is, if I own a hospital and if I don't own a hospital, I'm assigned two different numbers. If I own a HOPD, I'm assigned a different number than when I own an ASC, right? And I like to be on the assigned the higher number to me type category. So I think that's an interesting distinction. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys is I want to make sure we hit some news. What are some of the top stories that you guys, Dr. Koch already talked about his, so the two of you are left. What are the top two stories that you guys loved this last week? It could be
I don't watch the
$14
news.
billion. Oh, yeah. All right, just pick one. And I don't care if it's healthcare or not.
I've been watching. I've just been following a lot on AI recently, and I think, when I heard the few speakers that were talking at this White House summit about the future of AI, and obviously it's been the buzz everywhere, but it seems like there's a lot of thought leaders and policymakers that are finally here in the United States. They're making big bets into AI. I think all the major corporations in America are putting lots of money into AI. I can't give you the sums, but it sounds like this is that infrastructure building where they're doing a lot of CapEx spending on AI, and we're going to see some downstream. The way they kind of compared it was, remember when ATMs came into play and everyone's freaking out that the bank tellers are going to actually lose their jobs. I think like Jason from All In podcast made this comparison, and then all of a sudden you actually had more bank tellers because it created such a productivity boom with the banks. So this is an enabling technology that's going to create way more productivity. And I've seen it even in the small applications in my own practice with workflows, how incredibly powerful AI is. And I'm just kind of trying to wrap my mind around it and how it's going to apply in medicine. Dutch, you and I have had some conversations about this, how AI agents could be the future, of medicine in terms of,
How do you think I get so much done in a day?
Yeah.
I mean, I got 12 employees. I got 7 AI agents. They do so much of the workflow. Like, we ought to just do a pod on that. Like, and explain it to docs, so especially the ones in private practice can start taking advantage of it, because they still do everything super slow. I did a Zoom call with a company out of the Philippines that's using AI agents for RCM. I mean, it's unbelievably brilliant for our side. And it talks about, and they're working on IDR, doing auto submissions. Oh, I mean, like, it's brilliant. And I know you're involved with that, and I love that. I mean,
I feel like a lot of AI in India and maybe in the Philippines too breaks down to labor units, lots of labor units doing what AI should be. You remember there's a funny story, right? It was there was this Whole Foods, I think it was Whole Foods, where there was this pilot project through Amazon that you were going to walk in, you were just going to look at and select what you want, right? And then based on that, and you would just walk out, right? There's no register or anything. You just walk out, and they would have labeled it using AI because of what you selected and where your eyes were going and all that stuff. Something to that effect. I'm probably getting some of the details wrong there. But basically you get my point. It's like AI is going to basically, know what you're taking, and it's going to recognize your face, and there's going to be a debit. And so it just automatically debits it, right? And it turns out there's supposed to be some complicated AI. It turns out there was no AI there. It was just a bunch of Indians that were looking at the video and labeling things. So I have questions about your Filipino. I mean, why if you can pay, I want to know why a Philippine company has this AI RCM thing when the average Filipino you can hire for like $3 an hour. So I know the AI is a Filipino nurse named Eileen.
He's Indian. He's allowed to say whatever he wants. I can talk about Mexicans. He can say whatever he wants about Indians. I'm out of here. This is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, the crazy thing is we use virtual assistants from the Philippines, and it's $4 an hour, and it's actually, with the currency exchange, it's actually equivalent to like a 6-figure job here in the United States, like with economic purchasing power, like $4.
Do you know how much trouble you're gonna get into with Trump?
Sorry,
you're outsourcing jobs.
Yeah. I thought we were bringing things back to America, Dan.
There is no hope for you in administration, man. None.
No. You're not getting Vinay's job.
I don't want.
That's over. You were a candidate.
I do not want to be tariffed. Please keep this on the deal. Edit this out. Thank you.
Let's get back to this, because I think we ought to talk about this next week. And I want you guys to really take 5 seconds out of your day while you're doing unimportant things to think about it. But I would love a progress report on Secretary Kennedy, Dr. Oz, and what we think the Trump administration is doing. I'm going to give them a D- today. Today is July 28th. And so I am about to go on the warpath. And for me, that just means, content videos, and I'm going to start screaming. And so, which will probably accomplish nothing except upset more senators, as I like to do, and reps. But the truth is, we have a once kind of in a generation opportunity, and I don't really see any action. And I don't see any action in popular culture. Like, I thought by now, maybe some of the big podcasters would have, one of the three of you on, or the three of you, or like they'd have some real independence on. I haven't seen it. I think there's been one, but that was about the COVID shot, which, okay, I just don't care about that. So sorry. I care about other things. So I don't really see kind of society and this right-wing thing helping healthcare. And so maybe Dr. Koch is right, where they're just like, you know what? It is a right, except we're not going to say that because we're supposed to be free market people, but it is a right. And so you're going to be you're going to do what I say when I get sick. But I think we got to figure out a way to get their attention. And I'm usually good at not being nice and then getting attention. But I'd like to do that next week.
What percent of the U.S. GDP is spent on healthcare? We're at, I've seen in 2023 is like 17.6% as a sector.
Yeah, we spent 5.1 trillion last year, and we're at 20%. I mean, that's the numbers.
The fact that
Coca, did you
a fifth of our economy, and we're not having major, kind of the administration is not, it's not even part of any of their language or priorities is concerning. When everyone
it's a political.
I love it when Dr. Koch is like annoyed, but he's not annoyed. So he just like there and like he sits back. He starts. Don't ever play poker with me.
None of us could play poker.
He just starts, and I could just see it on his face. And I just go, "Oh my god!" It's like your dad, Just he's pissed.
I corrected I countered one of your points that most of the government money is actually ending up in the hospitals and not the insurance companies' profits. But I think that's also debatable.
Ooh, I've not thought about that. Ooh, let's take a look at that.
I retweeted Coca with just a gentle. I ran it through ChatGPT. Here's what the AI told me the financial breakdown is.
You know what I love about that though is that you're willing to do it. I've got some docs that'll like send me messages and they're like, "Hey, I didn't want to correct you, but this was incorrect." And I'm like, "You can correct me anytime you want. Like, it's public square. I won't be mad. I'm not going to, do anything. I think
It was an agreement. It was an agreement but comment type.
and but. Okay, look, this has been a wonderful edition of the Doctor's Lounge. It is almost 10 o'clock. Oh, it's 10:30 on the East Coast. And so I'm really, really happy to see you guys. I'm really thankful that after 3 weeks I could come back on the pod. Dr. Choi, wonderful to see you. Dr. DiGiorgio, always fantastic. Your audio, tech, everything always works perfectly. Love it. Dr. Coca, you're at a 9.5 out of 10. It's doing great. So happy, so thankful to be here. And as always, we look forward to next week.